Welcome to Type C Tech Reviews. Today we're going to be doing a review of the INNOCN 40C1R. If at any point during the video you want to check out this exact same monitor, there's Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links, but let's jump into it. Okay, now first things first, this is a massive screen size at 40 inches with a 21:9 aspect ratio, so an ultra-wide, but it's 40 inches. Now typical ultra-wides are 34 inches, which is essentially the height of a 27-inch monitor. Then we've also seen some pretty few, maybe 38-inch monitors, and that's pretty much where it's topped out. This one's 40 inches, and it's kind of a budget monitor. However, even at this monstrous size, this still has a 3440 by 1440p resolution, meaning the PPI, or pixels per inch, how crisp and clear the image is going to be actually to your eyes. This is a little bit lower here because it keeps a 1440p resolution with that big screen size, so the PPI is about 93 pixels per inch. That's about what a 1080p 24-inch monitor, that's about the same PPI as that. Now, the image is pretty clear. I wouldn't call it crispy. However, if you're used to a 1080p 24-inch monitor, this is gonna be basically the same to you, and there's not gonna be any difference there. This isn't a super low PPI, so we're not worrying about that. This isn't unbearable, but it's also not the highest. It's kind of in the middle, I would say right below the middle. If you're used to really high resolution panels where you cannot see any pixelation, you can see some pixelation here on small text, so do be aware of that. However, if you're used to a 1080p panel, this is going to be an upgrade regardless, probably. Now, I will say I am used to high resolution panels. Now, this doesn't bother me in game. It does bother me a little bit, not too much, while I'm doing stuff like editing, photo editing. As you guys know, I use every monitor that I review to do every task that I do every day on, so that way I can get a better understanding of how the monitor can be used in a ton of different use case scenarios. And with this one, I wanted more resolution, doing more work style, workflow kind of work. But when gaming, it didn't bother me at all. I also enjoy this because if you did have a higher resolution, you wouldn't be able to push those frames. Now, the panel type. Now, this is an IPS panel, but it is an IPS ADS panel, basically a modified IPS panel. ADS, or originally named Advanced Super Dimension Switch, this technology allows for a higher contrast ratio and a more rigid panel, although I don't know why you would need a more rigid panel. However, the big thing is this actually cuts down on a layer inside of the panel, increasing brightness. That being said, this doesn't mean that it's automatically higher brightness. It just means that the amount of backlight, the strength of the backlight for this can be less compared to a typical IPS panel. So it lets through more light essentially. Now, I personally believe they use this panel type because whoever manufactures this probably also manufactures ADS IPS panels. However, I think they use this to keep specs high, such as brightness or higher, to be competitive, but use the ADS panel to bring down on their price. And that's my theory. It may not be correct. I also do want to say, if you're used to an IPS panel, the IPS ADS is exactly the same. Like if you prefer an IPS panel over like a VA or anything else, this is like an IPS panel. It will seem normal to you. And obviously the pros of an IPS panel are better colors and fantastic viewing angles, which this has. Now, we're still not off of the size and all of this, but one more thing, and that is I wasn't really that excited about this monitor when I first got it. And the reason is that it doesn't have a curve. Now, originally I thought, okay, I have used 34-inch flat ultrawides and they are good and they're fine and I like them. However, they're not immersive like a curved 34-inch is. Now, my daily driver is a curved 34-inch. So when I use a flat ultrawide, I typically notice it. Now, I have used good ones and they're good and I enjoy them. But I was thinking 40 inches is quite a bit bigger. It's probably gonna be noticeable that there's no curve there and I'm probably not going to enjoy it. That's what I thought. Then I unboxed this and started gaming on it, and boy, was I wrong. This thing is incredibly immersive. Even though there's no curve, the screen size is so massive that your peripheral view is a lot of the screen. And so even though there's no curve to curve around you, it's actually the opposite of what I thought. Because the screen size is so big, you don't really need a curve, because most of the time you're not actually gonna be looking left to right. You're gonna be looking mainly at the center of the panel. So during FPS games, racing, Forza Horizon, stuff like that, this thing was absolutely stunning to game on. It was so immersive, it was beautiful, and it was quite addicting to game on. All right, finally moving to refresh rate and variable refresh rate. Now this goes all the way up to 144 Hertz, which is fantastic and also not expected at this price point, because we're going to get to that at the end of the video, but the value here. Now, this has FreeSync Premium, and this is not G-Sync compatible, nor does it have G-Sync. It is not a G-Sync monitor. However, it's not certified by NVIDIA, but it does work with G-Sync. It worked pretty well for me, and during my immense amount of gaming and testing, this didn't have any screen tearing at all. There was no noticeable screen tearing, so that is good, but it's also expected. Now, the peak brightness. This is where it gets a little bit weird, okay? So first of all, this has an HDR 400 certification, so that typically means the monitor goes up to 400 nits. If you see one of those certifications, HDR 600, 400, 500, whatever, it typically means the monitor goes up to that amount of that nittage, right? 400 nits, HDR 400. Well, this has an HDR 400 certification, then it claims to go up to 500 nits of brightness in non-HDR. Weird, right? However, this is a small / newer company, so maybe they had a typo. I know Scepter does some typos every now and then, which is okay, it's fine. I think this was a typo, or I can't figure out how to get the brightness that high. Initially, after unboxing this, I did a test with my luxometer, and it was about 300 nits. I wasn't impressed with this brightness, but it's a fine brightness. However, after testing this, gaming on it more, trying to go through all of the menu systems, I did figure out a way to increase the brightness in SDR content. Now, to get more nits, you have to go into your picture settings and then go into contextual mode, which I have no idea what that means, but fine. And then there's like 4 modes inside of that. If you click movie, it will then increase your brightness substantially. Now, after doing this, I got the brightness all the way up to 355 nits, which is considerably brighter than that 300 nits, and it looks way better. And this thing is very pretty, very vibrant, very nice to game on when doing that contextual mode with the movie. Yes, it will oversaturate some parts of it. For gaming, this looks fantastic. It looks beautiful. That's what I like. I probably like oversaturated stuff during gaming. If you want to do color accurate stuff, just don't turn on the contextual mode and then it's fine. But whatever. So HDR, let's talk about it. It's bad. I'm not gonna say anything else. It's bad. If you want a good HDR experience, this isn't it. Go somewhere else, okay? It has it. It has the functionality. You can try it. You won't like it. Let's move on. But the overall vibrancy and brightness is good. I like it, and it's substantially better than what I thought it was in the unboxing. The thing that makes me mad is that maybe this monitor does go up to 500 nits, and the menu system is just so cluttered and bad that I cannot figure out how to make it go up to 500 nits. When you turn the brightness to 100%, it should increase the brightness to the max SDR brightness possible on a monitor, which is what basically every other monitor does. This monitor doesn't do that. Why does the contextual mode increase its brightness substantially? I don't know. I don't know if I'm missing something here, that I have to press something or do something to make this thing go all the way up to 500 nits or higher than that. I don't know. If I do figure it out, or if one of you guys figures it out, I will ping your comment, or I will comment how to do it later on. I will try to contact the company and stuff like that to see if I can actually figure out how to get this brightness higher, if it does go higher. But again, it will be commented in the comment section pinned below. All right, now colors. This is actually pretty dang good, and it was kind of surprising to me, honestly. Okay, so firstly, this thing comes pre-calibrated from the factory, and it's well. It comes with a sheet of your calibration for each individual monitor, which should be slightly different for each individual monitor. And the accuracy out of the box is quite good. So realistically, you could take this out of the box and do some video and photo editing. Obviously not professional grade stuff because of that PPI. However, if you do senior photos, but you also game, or you're maybe into YouTube creation, this is more than enough for doing most YouTube videos and stuff like that. I mean, this is really cool. It's kind of weird to me because it has the good color accuracy, but then it has a lower PPI. So it's kind of like, are you going for a creative audience or are you going for gamers? I'm not sure what's going on here, but it's what it is. It's a little bit of a weird monitor, but it's a good one. Now this covers 95% of the DCI-P3 color space, which is good considering everything this gives you. I think it's really good. And not only that, but this thing can output 10 bits of color at full 144 hertz, which is something I didn't expect. But I guess more and more companies are doing this, which is very cool. All right, now contrast ratio. This is slightly higher than on a typical non-ADS IPS panel. This one is 1200 to 1. Typical IPS panels are about 1000 to 1. Now this is a very minimal difference. This isn't mathematical here, so don't quote me, but maybe a 6 to 7% difference, which is basically going to be not noticeable, even immediately as you set this up. The only way you're gonna be able to see this change with the darks and blacks of your screen is if you put a typical IPS and this monitor next to it. That's probably the only way that you're ever going to see the change. So it is an improvement, but you won't notice it. As for backlight bleed, my unit had none, so that's great. Now, response time, ghosting, and input lag. Now, the response time for this monitor is slower than normal, causing more ghosting. But don't run for the hills just yet. There is still some good stuff, and I want to talk about it. So yeah, firstly, there is ghosting. Yes, it is there. And for an IPS panel, there is a bit. Comparing this to a VA panel, this has lower ghosting than basically all gaming VA panels, not quite all, but most of them. So this still has low ghosting on the big scheme of things. However, this does have more ghosting than maybe a typical, nicer IPS gaming monitor. Now, it was noticeable to me immediately as I started gaming, but I also just came from a crystal clear, very fast IPS panel and a high-end one. So it was definitely gonna be more noticeable to me than most of you guys. This little amount of ghosting, I don't think is gonna be that noticeable to you unless you're a very fast-paced, competitive gamer. So 95% of you shouldn't worry about this, but again, you can see it on screen. If this ghosting is gonna bother you, don't get it. Oh, and also the response time settings, there's like 4 different settings. They change basically nothing. You can go to the fastest one. There's no pixel overshooting or inverse ghosting. There's just normal ghosting, and it basically changes nothing. So the tuning for the ghosting is not that good. I personally don't think this would be a deal breaker, but that all depends on who you are and what your play style is. However, more important is the input lag. At least that's my opinion. So the input lag on this is actually quite low, and that was surprising. This is something I thought was going to be higher because, you know, it's a lesser known company. It's not a name brand, but no, this thing actually had pretty dang low input lag, especially for what it is and the price point. As soon as out of the box, I could feel that it was much quicker, and that turned out to be correct. This does have faster input lag. So if you like faster paced gaming, the ghosting is not the best for it, but it's definitely not the worst at all. It's not even in the middle. I think it's a little bit above that, considering the size and everything else. So the input lag is really good. That makes this a really enjoyable gaming experience for me. Now for the menu system and controls. This is the single worst menu system I have ever used. It is absolutely atrocious. It is terrible. It uses 4 buttons to navigate. It does have a dedicated power button. That's something that I like. But those 4 buttons to navigate are awful. Scepters use something like that, but Scepter doesn't have a terrible menu system. It's ugly, but it's functional. This one is not really that functional. It's very unintuitive. The button system's unintuitive. And then the menu system itself is not intuitive. The icons don't look easy to understand. I can't look at the icons and see, oh, that's what that means. Also, the names of things don't mean anything. I don't understand what they mean. They also have on and off for some things when it should just be a selection, like your picture mode should be a selection, not an on and off, because there can only be one that's on at the same time. It just doesn't make sense. It's bad, it's overall bad. Now, even though the menu system is bad, this really shouldn't be the reason that you shouldn't get it. Like, it shouldn't be a deal breaker to you. It's fine, okay? It will work, you'll get used to it, and most of you will probably have to change it like 1 or 2 times. So, big deal. Moving on to Vesa Compatibility. This is Vesa compatible with 100mm by 100mm Vesa mounts. Is that how you say that? Is that the correct way to say that? Whatever. However, I will say, if you're going to Vesa mount this with, let's say, a monitor arm or a wall mount or something like that, you better get a strong one and a big one and an expensive one, because this thing is heavy. So if you do want to do a monitor arm, you're not going to be able to go with one of those $40 or $50 ones that I've actually featured on the channel before. Those ones work for most monitors. This one is way too heavy. Like, this thing, this is a big boy. So if you do want to mount it on your wall or mount it on a desk or something like that, you got to take into account that it's going to cost you over $100 to get a nice, and probably $150 to get a nice monitor arm for this monitor. It's a hefty one. All right, now internal speakers. This actually has one. They don't get super loud. They're muffled, but they're honestly not bad for monitor speakers. They get just loud enough where they're very useful for YouTube tutorials, stuff like that. I was actually using it for that. So overall, they're good, but again, monitor speakers, so a low bar. But it's nice they have them, so yeah. All right, now ports, they do some good things here. They have 2 HDMI 1.4s, a DisplayPort 1.4, a USB Type-C, and then a 3.5mm audio out. Now, there's some good and some bad here. The HDMI's 1.4, kind of weird, wish they had 2.0, but it doesn't bother me because I'm only gonna be using DisplayPort. But the HDMI 1.4s can output full resolution at 100 hertz. So I don't think any of the consoles do ultra-wide gaming. I don't know that though, don't quote me there. But if you did wanna plug in like a PS4, like a last gen, so 100 hertz of full resolution. However, moving on from that, the DisplayPort obviously does full resolution, has more than enough bandwidth. The USB-C does full resolution at 60 hertz, but it provides 90 watts of charging. What the heck? That is awesome. That means you can literally plug your MacBook Pro in or Dell XPS, something like that, whatever you want, plug it in and it's charging. Like, it's gonna be charging. That is extremely cool. So I think overall, very good and kind of surprising with that USB-C. All right, stand and build quality is kind of a mixed bag here. The stand itself feels and looks very good, really on par with name brands like Dell and LG, and the base part of it is actually higher quality than Dell or LG, having a full piece of black metal. It looks good, it feels good. It's literally just a solid hunk of metal. It's nice. So that part is better than Dell and LG, but the overall construction of the stand, everything like that is very good. The back of the monitor is pretty and it shares similar design elements, and it's overall a nice, high-end, refined looking and feeling monitor. So that was actually surprising there, except for one thing, the absolutely ridiculous placement of the power and the ports. They put the power over on the left side, and then they put all of the ports over on the right side. And they're basically as far as you can go on this monitor, where the actual kind of control area of the monitor, all the systems inside of there. So they're pretty far to the right. And that means cable management is awful. Number one, it's going to actually stretch your cables longer because it has to come in the back of the monitor and then pull out over this way. And then you have two cables hanging down, which are pretty hard to cable manage. So you have one on the left and the right, and it looks so bad. It's not nice. Why did they do that? What's going on? Terrible. At least put them on one side. But what about functionality? Functionality with height feels good. It goes up and down nicely. It feels smooth, similar to name brands like Dell and LG. However, the tilt and the swivel feel plasticky, bad, overall not that good. The tilt actually, on my unit at least, does not stay full tilted up, like the farthest up you can go. If I put it all the way up there, it kind of droops back down, which is really annoying. So overall, the functionality is good, but it doesn't feel premium. All right, price and value. This is the good section. This is where this thing shines. Okay, this retails at $600, which is, how do I say this? Competitive as hell. This is a 40-inch IPS ultrawide 1440p monitor at $600. That is 144 hertz. That's competitive as hell. I don't even think there's another one on the market that is even like this. That is incredible. Okay, that price is amazing. The value at this price point is pretty much unmatched. Yes, there are some things wrong with it, but the value is so good, I'm willing to let that slide for sure. Now, I want to say this monitor isn't for everyone. If you want a really high resolution, super wide color gamut for photo editing, and then you can game on it really nicely, I would say this isn't perfect. You could do it, but it's not perfect. It would be great for gaming, not the best for the other thing, not the best for editing, stuff like that, workflow. But if you want a giant ultrawide, you want good colors, you still want good gaming performance, the ghosting's a little bit, but honestly, not at all bad, and you don't really care about a curve or having super high PPI, this is a really, really fantastic value. So overall, do I recommend this monitor? Well, if you want a huge screen, great colors, an insane gaming experience, and a ton of bang for your buck, then yes, absolutely. Again, if you want to check it out, there's Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links. This thing actually surprised me. I didn't think I was gonna recommend it this much. I didn't think I was gonna like it this much. This is a cool monitor. This is really going to be the perfect monitor for someone out there. I know that a lot of you viewing this are gonna find this monitor, they're gonna watch this review, they're gonna buy it, and it is gonna be the perfect monitor for them at a really good price. And I'm super happy about that because there's not a lot of monitors that are like this. A lot of monitors try to copy, you know, we got the 27-inch, we got the 32, we got a 34-inch ultrawide. This thing did a ton of things differently, some of them bad, but it tried and it came out with a really good product overall. Not perfect, but it's really good. Okay, but if you wanna watch the unboxing, boom, right there, check it out. That's the unboxing, that's my first impressions. You can see how I kind of unboxed and whatever. But yeah, this was Type C Tech Reviews, and I'll see you guys in the next video.